Hello there, world of tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Blitz, and in today's video, we are going to be taking a first look at the Object 452K, the Tier 9 Soviet Collector Heavy Tank. A vehicle that features high alpha, pretty solid armor, and even decent mobility. I'll be letting you know just about everything you need to in today's video about this tank before it is released into the game, and as well, you'll see a couple people right now rolling around in this vehicle as it's being currently tested. Now, I should point out that the statistics and armor profile I do show you could be subject to change in the future if Wargaming does decide it's performing too strong or the other side performing too weak. So the statistics overall are probably going to stay very similar to what you're seeing right now, but expect a couple minor tweaks here or there when this vehicle is finally released. So in front of you we can see what the tank looks like, and it's a very, very cool design. It's got a big old frontal lower plate, and I can tell you that lower plate's going to be a huge weak spot, but we can also see that the upper plate is super well angled, and that is same for the turret. This vehicle features OK gun depression, which actually allows it to hide that lower plate, and it's just kind of like a pancake, to be completely honest. I really like the design of it, though. I think it's kind of cool, looks aerodynamic, so I'm a big fan of this vehicle. Looks pretty sweet. We're going to be taking a look at how this vehicle compares to its other Tier 9 heavy tank counterparts, being the 50 TP prototype, the Type 68, and the ST1. Now, if you wanted to add in a vehicle as well that had 460 damage per shot, we could also get a 50 TP in here, but overall, this tank is it's pretty comparable to a lot of these vehicles. So the first thing we want to take a look at is the damage per minute, which sits at 2,375. That's not bad damage per minute at all, to be completely honest. I mean, it's nothing crazy, but it's plenty. If you compare that to a vehicle like the 50 TP, which has 460 alpha, which is the same as this other Tier 9 452K, then it's not bad DPM at all. I mean, with Cali, you're having 2,102 DPM for the 50 TP, where with this tank you have 2,208. So it's going to be really nice to have 460 damage per shot and comparable DPM to a lot of the lower alpha heavy tanks, for example, like the 50 TP prototype and the ST1. So let's get that 50 TP out of here. Now, when it comes to the penetration, it is 258 on the standard, which if we compare it to all the other vehicles is pretty on point. I mean, the ST1 features the IS-4 gun, so it's got the most pen at 271, but 258 is plenty. The heat is also pretty important at 352. It's not bad pen at all, but I should also point out that vehicles like the ST1 and Type 68 feature that glorious 374, so the pen's not bad on this tank, but it's definitely nothing amazing. It will be able to penetrate E100 turret cheeks, though. It will cut through a Jagdpanzer hull down, so it has enough pen, which is honestly, I think 352 is a pretty nice sweet spot in Tier 9. It's plenty of pen to cut through your opponents, and it's nothing obnoxious like the Type 68 or ST1 carries that kind of ignores all purpose of armor. The 50 TP prototype, even though it looks like it has pretty bad pen, does fire APCR, so it's not the best pen out there, but it's not terrible for what it is. Now, when it comes to the rate of fire, it's not actually too bad. It's 4.8 rounds a minute, which is just a bit less than the 50 TP proto, so I actually don't mind the rate of fire on this vehicle at all. And when it comes to the high explosive damage, it sits at 600, which is the exact same as the 50 TP, but not the same as the 50 TP Proto, obviously, because this tank is a bit less alpha, dealing 560. So I do like that. Big chunks of damage with the high explosive. That's something that I always like about those 130mm armaments. When it comes to the shell velocity, not too bad either. It's a little bit poorer than the rest, but it still gets the job done all the time. Aiming time-wise, I'm actually very surprised to say it's not bad. It's about 10% better than the ST1, while being about 4% better than the Type 68 and the 50 TP prototype. However, we take a bit of an opposite direction when it comes to the dispersion on this vehicle. Sitting at 0.353 makes it about 3% worse than the 0.344 dispersion that the other heavies do carry. And if you think it's just these vehicles because they have less alpha, even if we get out tanks that do have more damage per shot, like the Moishin, the 75, the VK4502P, and as well, if we were able to find the 50 TP, all of them have 0.344, every single one. So, unfortunately, for the 452K, it's a bit worse, but honestly, 3% is not a huge or even noticeable difference in most battles, so I would much rather have that aiming time advantage rather than that slight dispersion disadvantage. When it comes to the on-movement dispersion, ooh, yeah, that's pretty bad. 0.19, 0.22, and 0.13 makes this a very inaccurate vehicle on the move, which does make sense. To be fair, if we put out a high high alpha vehicle like the 50TP, it's pretty similar at 0.2, 0.2, and 0.16. So while the 452K is not the most accurate vehicle out there, it's pretty comparable to its other 130mm armament friends rather than the lower alpha Type 68 and 50TP Proto. The ST1 just has some of the worst on-movement values in Tier 9, which is really weird when you think about it. Gun depression-wise, also very flexible. It's not 8 or 9 degrees, but you know what? 7 degrees for a Soviet Heavy is plenty. Especially when we take a look at the armor profile, it's a lot of gun depression for what this tank has. The 50TP Proto actually has a lot, though, at 8 degrees. The Type 68 only has 6, but you can get it up to 9 if you run the improved aiming device, and as well, ST1 is 8 degrees. So a lot of these heavies are pretty similar when it comes to gun depression, making them all very good at hull down capabilities. Now, mobility-wise, this tank is weird. It's not actually bad at all on power to weight, especially effective power to weight. We can see it is way, way better than the Type 68, which is 10.8 and 10.6 on the ST1, and it's even faster than the 50TP prototype, which is known as a very, very powerful vehicle. So it's fast. It's not going to be slow at all. It's effective power to weight is really good. As well, that is the same for medium terrain, which is 12.4 and 9.2 in soft. It's a pretty mobile tank. I will give this vehicle credit. It's got a good top speed as well at 40 kilometers per hour. 12 in reverse is really the only killer, but even though that is really bad in reverse, I mean a lot bad in reverse, it's 25% worse than the 50TP prototype, and even the ST1, which is not the fastest in reverse, only going 1 better, is still 8% faster. That just shows you how much of a difference reverse speed is and how much it can affect your tank. So, yeah, it's not the best in reversing, but I do like the fact that it's fast and it's got a good top speed. When it comes to traverse speed, sitting at 25 degrees a second is not bad. I mean, it looks bad when you compare it to the 50TP prototype, but if we get a more reasonable comparison like the Type 68 and the ST1, the vehicle's plenty fast on traverse, so you're not going to have to worry about being flanked by mediums or anything of that nature. Camouflage is pretty average for the vehicle at 10%. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just meh when it comes to camouflage. View range is pretty average at 264 meters. We can see it's the same across all these vehicles. Hit point sits at 2,100, which is pretty average as well. It's not as high as the Type 68 or ST1, but it's plenty. It's still more than the 50TP prototype, so I'll take it. The final thing we want to take a look at is the turret armor on this tank. How good is it? How good is the hull armor? Well, this is what the ST1 sees on flat, and it's kind of funky, as you'll notice. When you're looking at the lower plate, it's bad. It's 118 thick. That means if you're a vehicle that fires HESH, like the FE215B, the Centurion, the FE420, the 183, yeah, you're going to cut right through that lower plate. And the lower plate is only 65 thick. That means if you get out some big boy tank destroyers like the 268, yeah, you can actually penetrate that lower bit on the vehicle. Same for the hatch, which is only 50 millimeters thick. So do keep that in mind. The side of this tank as well has some very, very easy penetration spots. This is actually solid armor, not spaced. And the rear of the turret and the hull are also both high explosive penetrations if you're able to connect them. However, the nice thing about this vehicle is that it's all based on hull down armor. So on flat, yeah, it's got some big, huge weak spots, but once you get hull down, this is what the vehicle looks like. I'm not sure if this gun mantlet is going to be a weak spot. I guess we'll find out, but I can't imagine it's going to be too much of a weak spot when this vehicle is actually released. Hopefully Wargaming patches that. But this is what the vehicle looks like fully hull down to an ST1 heat shell. It looks like there's a weird weak spot right in the center of the tank here. I'm not sure if that's actually a weak spot that's going to exist, or that's just a bug on Armor Inspector, but if it is a weak spot, you can see that will be a penetrable position that you might even be able to pen with high explosive shells. I doubt it, but I guess we'll find out. When it comes to the rest of the armor on this tank, I mean, that upper plate, 450, the turret, look at that, 800 thick. That means even if you're shooting HE, you're going to deal 0 damage to the turret of this tank, and even if you're shooting at the hull, it's still going to do very, very little damage. So armor-wise, this tank is pretty dang impressive. It is going to be a very, very hard penetration hull down. Now, when it comes to the side armor, it's not great. I mean, at a slight angle, you can already see the side skirts become weak, and yeah, it's not the best at side scraping. This is not your average Soviet Heavy. It's going to be very easy to penetrate on a side scrape. And even if it is side scraping okay, if you just have this back panel here of the tank, you can actually pen that. So So, yeah, I mean, this vehicle, it's got a lot of weak spots just about everywhere. It's a really, really cool design, and I like that Wargaming is actually giving it weak spots. You might think the side of the turret at that super steep angle is going to be a hard pen, but nah, it's a pretty easy penetration overall. Same for the rear of the turret, pretty easy to pen. So, I think that this vehicle actually looks pretty fine in its current state. It's got good alpha and really solid hull-down capabilities, as long as you keep the vehicle hull down towards the front of your opponents. The only thing that really needs to be fixed is that turret mantlet. If that doesn't get fixed, it's going to be pointless to drive this vehicle. Same for that little spot here. I think that apart from that, this tank is completely fine. It's got some weak spots underneath here, and it's got a weak spot underneath the turret ring here that you can penetrate. Also, if you're on flat, I mean, the vehicle's just a super easy pen. So, overall, really, really unique tank, and a really fun design. I'm actually not freaking out about this being overpowered or really anything. I guess we'll have to see what happens to this tank when it finally does get released. As I said, unfortunately, I expect this vehicle to come out in crates, but I guess we will find out. Hopefully, you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.